The dam spoke in numbers, and numbers didn't lie. Elias Crow stood in the dark of his control shed, a narrow structure of concrete and rusted steel tucked against the canyon wall, watching a thin green line tremble on a translucent display. The telemetry feed hadn't updated like this in decades. A fractional pressure variance, small enough to evade automated alarms, precise enough to unsettle anyone who understood water the way Elias did. He zoomed in, fingers steady. 0.7% deviation. Impossible without interference. Outside, the desert wind slid through scrub and stone, carrying the faint hum of distant suburbia. Sunvale. 30,000 residents, 35,000 rules. Zero memory of what existed before their perfect streets. Elias pulled up the satellite overlay and felt something cold settle behind his ribs. Where dry earth should have been, where runoff naturally dispersed, there were rooftops. Clean geometry. Identical angles. Solar panels glinting like scales. 35 houses arranged with algorithmic precision, their foundations pressing directly against the dam's spillway corridor. They built on it, he said aloud, voice flat. They actually built on it. The dam wasn't a relic. It was a living system, old but adaptive, designed long before water became a commodity traded by prediction engines. Elias's grandfather had helped calibrate its original flow logic. Elias himself had rewritten parts of its neural control mesh before corporate consolidation pushed him out. And now someone had told the land registry the spillway was empty ground. The display chimed softly. A compliance notice unfolded across the screen, sterile and polite. Unauthorized access detected. Please submit inquiry through approved channels. Elias snorted and shut the interface down. He didn't need permission to know when his land was stolen. The next morning, he drove into Sunvale. The transition was abrupt. One moment he was winding through raw desert, the next he passed beneath an arch of brushed steel welcoming him to a harmonized living environment. The road smoothed. The dust vanished. Lawns appeared, green, flawless, irrigated by systems that never asked where the water came from. Drones hovered at lamppost height, their lenses tracking vehicles with soft mechanical patience. He parked beside a row of identical mail kiosks and stepped out. The air smelled faintly of citrus cleanser. Somewhere, speakers played a muted instrumental track designed to reduce cortisol. Elias followed the pedestrian path to the compliance center, a glass and concrete cube at the neighborhood's core. Inside, everything was white, curved, and reassuring. A holographic interface blossomed as he approached. "Welcome to Sunvale Unified HOA," the voice said, genderless and calm. "Please state your concern." "My land was rezoned without consent," Elias replied. "Parcel C-17B. The spillway corridor." A brief pause. Not silence. Processing. "That parcel is registered as unclaimed infrastructure buffer," the system answered. "Development approved under Adaptive Expansion Protocol." "That buffer is a dam control zone," Elias said. "I hold legacy ownership and operational access." Another pause. Longer this time. "Please wait." The hologram shifted. A new face resolved into view, sharp features, immaculate posture, eyes that suggested she never blinked unless necessary. "Mr. Crow," the woman said. "I'm Marla Vance, Director of Compliance." "I didn't request a director," Elias said. "You triggered an anomaly," Marla replied smoothly. "Those route upward." "Then let's save time. You built homes on protected infrastructure." Marla smiled, small and controlled. "Our systems show no active risk." "Your systems are wrong. They're audited weekly." "So was the land registry that erased my ownership." Her smile thinned. "Legacy claims often conflict with modern governance. My claim predates your HOA by 40 years. "And yet," Marla said, "Sunvale stands. People live there. Children sleep in those homes. We can't undo that because of a technicality." "It's not a technicality. It's physics." Marla leaned closer to the camera. "Are you threatening us, Mr. Crow?" "No," Elias said. "I'm warning you." The line went dead. By evening, His access privileges were reduced. His vehicle was flagged. A notice appeared on his personal account informing him of accrued fines for unauthorized infrastructure interference. He sat in his truck at the edge of the development, watching the sun slide behind the houses. Lights flickered on in synchronized waves. Families moved inside, unaware of what lay beneath their foundations. Back at the dam, Elias reopened the system interface, bypassing the compliance layer with a sequence no one had updated because no one remembered it existed. The dam's AI stirred, its presence subtle but familiar. Status? Elias asked. Flow stable, the system responded. Pressure elevated above historical baseline. Cause? Surface alteration. Load distribution changed. Elias exhaled slowly. The dam didn't assign blame. It observed. He ran simulations through the night. Rainfall projections. Runoff vectors. Stress tolerances. Every model ended the same way. The home's constricted natural release paths. Pressure would build. The system would compensate, until it couldn't. At dawn, he sent one final report to Sunvale, attaching raw data and legacy schematics. The response came minutes later. No action required. Liability assumed by HOA governance ARI. Liability assumed. Risk ignored. Elias shut down the terminal and stepped outside. The canyon glowed amber in the early light. Water moved quietly behind the dam, patient and immense. They had taken his land. His warnings. His voice. But they hadn't taken the truth of the system. And systems, when pushed too far, always spoke, one way or another. By the third day, the fines began to compound. Elias watched the numbers rise on his personal ledger, each penalty neatly labeled: unauthorized monitoring, non-compliant access, disruption risk. None of it was real in the way gravity was real, but it carried weight all the same. His credit allotment dipped below the threshold for public services. The fuel station rejected his account. The supply drone refused to land. Sunvale didn't shout. It squeezed. He adapted. Elias always had. At night, he worked from analog backups, paper schematics, handwritten flowcharts, data drives that had never touched a network. He cross-referenced dam telemetry with municipal expansion permits, tracing the HOA's decisions through layers of automated logic. What emerged wasn't malice. It was something worse: indifference encoded as efficiency. The HOA's governance AI didn't understand water. It understood liability curves. It calculated acceptable loss the way an accountant balanced risk, assuming infrastructure would behave as predicted because it always had. Until it didn't. Elias requested a formal review, triggering an arbitration session conducted in a virtual chamber designed to appear neutral. He stood alone on a digital platform while rows of empty seats curved around him, placeholders for community representatives who had delegated their authority to algorithms years ago. Marla Vance appeared again, crisp and unbothered. "You've escalated this matter beyond necessity," she said. "I escalated it because you ignored it. We evaluated your data and dismissed it because it complicates your expansion schedule." Marla's eyes flicked sideways, reading something he couldn't see. Sunvale operates within regulatory tolerance. Tolerances don't apply when you build on a release corridor. She clasped her hands. The system shows structural reinforcement. On the surface, Elias replied. You sealed off lateral flow paths. The dam compensates by increasing internal pressure, which remains within safety margins. For now. Marla sighed, a carefully deployed gesture. Mr. Crow, your expertise is noted. But the community's needs outweigh speculative risk. Speculative. Elias leaned forward. You're betting 35 households against basic hydrology. The residents are not variables, she said sharply. They're people. So am I. The chamber dissolved without a ruling. The next restriction came quietly. A drone hovered near his property line, projecting a translucent boundary marker that pulsed red when he approached. Access to the spillway exterior was now designated HOA safety zone. They were fencing off the problem. Elias drove into Sunvale again, this time on foot, blending into the morning flow of joggers and commuters. Screens along the walkway displayed community updates, water usage stats, satisfaction metrics, a smiling family standing in front of one of the new houses. He stopped near a woman struggling with a malfunctioning irrigation panel. The grass around her feet was brown, the only imperfection on the street. "System keeps resetting," she muttered. "May I?" Elias asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He knelt, adjusted a valve, and the panel hummed back to life. Water sprayed in a perfect arc. "Thank you," she said, relieved. "Are you with maintenance?" "No," Elias replied. "I work with water, though." She laughed lightly. "Figures. Everything here runs on it." He glanced at the houses behind her. "Do you know what's under your street?" She frowned. "Utilities." "More than that." Before he could continue, a drone drifted closer, its lens narrowing. The woman noticed and stepped back, suddenly cautious. "I should go," she said. "They don't like unscheduled work." Elias watched her leave, the drone tracking him until he moved on. Back at the dam, he initiated a deeper audit, accessing a dormant subsystem the HOA's AI hadn't indexed. The dam responded slowly, its voice layered with old protocols. "Override conditions available," it reported. "Define." Controlled release authorized under Legacy Safety Demonstration Clause. Elias's pulse quickened. A clause designed for training simulations and public transparency, buried so deep no modern system acknowledged it. He didn't activate it. Not yet. Instead, he mapped the HOA's risk model, overlaying it with real-world variables the AI ignored. Soil saturation, microfractures, human error. The model diverged sharply within weeks. A storm system formed over the mountains, its trajectory uncertain. The climate AI predicted minimal impact. Elias knew better. The land had changed. Water would behave differently now. He sent another message to Marla, stripped of emotion, heavy with data. This time, she came to him. Her vehicle arrived just before dusk, sleek and silent. Marla stepped out, heels sinking slightly into the dirt near the dam. She looked around with visible distaste. "You live like this by choice?" she asked. "I live where the system still listens," Elias said. She crossed her arms. "You're pushing this toward confrontation." "I'm trying to prevent one." Marla's gaze hardened. "If you interfere with HOA-controlled infrastructure, we will pursue full legal erasure." "Erase me," Elias replied evenly. "The water won't care." For a moment, something flickered across her face, uncertainty, quickly masked. "You're alone in this," she said. Elias looked past her, toward the reservoir, the darkening sky reflected on its surface. "No," he said. "I'm just the only one paying attention." As Marla drove away, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. The dam registered another pressure increase. Small. Predictable. Relentless. Elias opened his toolkit and began preparing, not to break the system, but to make it speak in a language everyone would finally hear. The rain arrived without ceremony. No thunderhead spectacle, no emergency alerts. Just a steady, insistent fall that darkened the canyon walls and turned dust into paste. Elias stood beneath the overhang of the control shed, watching the reservoir surface stipple and tighten, each drop adding weight to a system already under strain. The dam responded instantly. Numbers shifted. Flow regulators adjusted. The AI compensated the way it had been trained to, incrementally, conservatively, trusting that the landscape above would behave as expected. It didn't. Runoff reached the spillway corridor faster than the models predicted. Water funneled toward pathways that no longer existed, diverted by concrete slabs and buried foundations. Pressure migrated inward, pressing against old stone and reinforced joints with quiet insistence. Elias tracked the changes in real time, jaw set. The margin was shrinking. His console chimed. An incoming notice from Sunvale. Weather event classified as low impact. No action required. Of course, Elias muttered. By midday, the rain intensified. Streets in the lower sections of Sunvale gleamed with runoff, drain swallowing what they could. Residents moved indoors, trusting the systems that had never failed them. Marla Vance trusted them too. She stood in the compliance center, reviewing dashboards that glowed reassuring green. The governance AI fed her probability curves, each one smoothing uncertainty into something manageable. "Spillway readings?" she asked. "Within acceptable variance," the system replied. She exhaled, tension easing. Elias Crow was a variable, nothing more. A man clinging to outdated authority in a world that had moved on. Then a junior analyst spoke up from across the room. "Director, there's an unclassified data stream pinging the Public Works network." Marla turned. "Source? Legacy infrastructure. It's publishing." The first residents noticed something was wrong when their home systems chimed simultaneously. Water advisory. Temporary flow adjustment in progress. Cameras activated. Displays switched to informational mode. On screens across Sunvale, a live feed appeared, grainy at first, then sharpening. The dam. Elias had initiated the demonstration clause. Not a breach. Not a release. A controlled reveal. The feed showed the spillway corridor as it existed beneath the neighborhood. Sensors traced water movement in luminous lines, highlighting where flow should have dispersed and where it was being forced back. Elias's voice followed, calm and unhurried. "This is a legacy safety broadcast," he said. "If you're seeing this, it means the system has detected a structural deviation." In the compliance center, Marla's face drained of color. "Shut it down," she snapped. The AI hesitated. "Broadcast authorized under pre-existing safety protocol." "Override it." "Override unavailable." On the feed, the camera panned upward, revealing the underside of foundations. Clean, modern concrete pressing into pathways designed to breathe. "These homes were approved under an incomplete land model," Elias continued. "The dam compensated. It always does. But compensation isn't prevention." A resident's voice cut into the broadcast, routed through a public channel. "Are we in danger?" "No," Elias replied immediately. "Not if the system is allowed to correct itself." Rain hammered harder now, drumming against rooftops. In several homes, smart flooring detected rising moisture near expansion joints, nothing alarming, just enough to prompt unease. Marla slammed her hand onto the console. "His inducing panic." "His presenting data," the AI countered. Outside, emergency drones lifted from their docks, hovering uncertainly as protocols conflicted. Media bots picked up the unauthorized stream, relaying it outward. Elias monitored everything from the shed, hands steady as he adjusted parameters. He initiated a partial lateral release. Water redirected along secondary channels still clear of construction. The change was subtle but visible on the feed as pressure lines eased. "This is what the system needs," he said. "Space." In Sunvale, residents gathered at windows, watching rainwater behave strangely, pulling away from streets instead of pooling, guided by unseen forces. A call cut through Elias's console. Marla's face filled the screen, no longer polished. "You've gone too far," she said. "I stayed within the rules," Elias replied. "Yours just forgot they existed. You're undermining public trust. You did that when you built over reality." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain. Marla spoke again, quieter. "If something fails." "It won't," Elias said. "Because I'm not breaking anything. I'm letting the dam do what it was designed to do." The AI chimed, its tone altered, almost strained. System divergence resolving. Pressure stabilizing. Across Sunvale, alerts shifted from advisory to informational. Fear gave way to confusion, then to questions. Why hadn't they been told? Why hadn't the HOA known? Marla closed her eyes briefly. The dashboards around her flickered, green giving way to amber as audit flags surfaced, contradictions the AI could no longer reconcile. "This isn't over," she said. "It is," Elias replied. "You just haven't accepted it yet." The rain began to ease as evening fell. The reservoir level stabilized, the dam humming with restored balance. Elias terminated the broadcast, leaving the final image frozen for a moment longer than necessary. The truth had flowed far enough. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion settling in. Outside, the desert breathed, water finding paths it had nearly forgotten. Somewhere in Sunvale, systems recalculated. Authority shifted. And for the first time, the HOA's perfect order showed cracks, not from force, but from pressure applied exactly where it mattered. Morning arrived stripped clean. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the canyon rinsed and quiet. Sunlight slid across wet stone and pooled briefly on the surface of the reservoir, which now lay calm, obedient, balanced. Elias stood on the dam's crest, hands resting on the cold rail, watching mist lift as if the land itself were exhaling. Behind him, the system ran without alarms. The controlled release had worked. Pressure equalized, stress redistributed along channels that had been denied for too long. The dam hadn't resisted, it had remembered. Below, Sunvale woke to consequences. Residents emerged cautiously, scanning updates projected onto windows and wrist displays. HOA notifications arrived late and clipped, stripped of their usual optimism. Autonomous maintenance units swarmed the newest block, drilling, scanning, exposing what had been hidden beneath clean sidewalks. Foundations sat where spillways should have been. By mid-morning, media drones circled overhead, their feeds saturating public channels. Not sensationalism, documentation. Engineers from the regional authority arrived, their credentials bypassing HOA filters that no longer held. The governance AI, under forced audit, flagged its own contradictions faster than compliance teams could suppress them. Marla Vance arrived at the dam just before noon. She didn't bring escorts this time. No drones followed her path. She looked smaller without the weight of invisible systems propping her up, her tailored coat wrinkled from a night that hadn't gone as planned. "You planned this," she said, stopping a few feet from Elias. "I planned for truth," he replied. "The rest was inevitable." She stared at the water. "Do you know how many investors pulled out this morning? Do you know how many models you ignored?" Elias asked. Marla turned to him, eyes sharp but tired. "You humiliated us." "No," Elias said gently. "You did that yourself." Silence settled between them, thick but no longer hostile. "The residents are demanding answers," Marla said. "They want accountability. They deserve it." "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" Elias considered the question. The land restored. The dam protected. Systems that listen instead of dictate. Marla let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "The board will scapegoat me." "Probably." She nodded once, accepting it. "They'll also dismantle the expansion protocol. Too much exposure now." "That's a start." Below them, a section of pavement was being peeled back, revealing the curved stone of the spillway, darkened by recent flow. Residents gathered at a safe distance, faces tight with realization. A man's voice carried upward. "You mean this was here the whole time?" Elias stepped forward, raising his voice. "It was always here. You were never in danger, until it was ignored." Questions followed. Not accusations, not panic. Curiosity. Doubt. The first cracks in blind trust. Regional authorities issued an injunction by afternoon. Construction halted. Properties flagged for remediation or relocation. The HOA's governance AI was suspended pending reconstruction under public oversight. Sunvale's perfect metrics vanished from the feeds. Marla watched it all unfold, her expression unreadable. "You could have broken everything," she said quietly. "Flooded the whole place." Elias shook his head. "That would have proved nothing." She studied him, then gave a thin, rueful smile. "You're an inconvenient man, Mr. Crow. I've been called worse." As she walked away, her silhouette seemed to dissolve into the bright noise of the day, another functionary displaced by reality. By evening, the canyon belonged to itself again. Elias descended into the control shed, initiating final adjustments. He rerouted long-term flow paths, restoring buffers erased by development. The dam responded with smooth efficiency, its system settling into a new equilibrium that felt older, wiser. System status. Stable, it reported. Good, Elias said. Let's keep it that way. He shut down the auxiliary feeds, leaving only essential monitoring active. The world beyond the canyon buzzed with analysis, blame, reform. None of it required his presence. Outside, water traced its ancient roots through stone and soil, indifferent to ownership or governance. It moved because it always had. Elias packed his tools and stepped into the fading light. The desert stretched before him, quiet and honest. Behind him, Sunvale's lights flickered uncertainly, no longer synchronized, learning to exist without absolute control. He walked away from the dam without looking back. Not because it was no longer his responsibility, but because it never needed domination to function. Only respect. And for the first time in years, the system and the land had both been heard.